Welcome to the podcast. We Do Recover with Jared Miller, your host.
And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
This is a podcast about recovery from addiction.
We want to talk about what successful recovery can look like.
Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
Listeners, thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedule to listen to episode 112. Today on We Do Recover, we're going to be tackling a topic of basically meet the staff. We have a new sponsor that came on, High Desert Counseling. I have the luxury of working at High Desert Counseling, and so I've invited some of my coworkers on here to basically for you to get to know them, talk about what we do at High Desert Counseling and some of the different things that we offer, services. So let me invite my guests on. Our featured guest is Vanisa Trainee. Vanisa, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad you're on here.
Me too.
And then we have a blast from the past. Episode 11, The Journey of Tyson and Crystal Hanig. We have Crystal Hanig here as our guest co-host to help me out today.
Hi. It's good to be here.
It's been forever, right?
I know it's been a while. And if I do math correctly, which is why I'm a social worker and not something else, that's like 101 episodes ago.
Yeah. It's been a minute.
That's awesome.
So that was a fun episode, though.
It was super fun.
So for those of you listening now, if you have not heard episode 11 with Tyson and Crystal, you got to go back and listen to that. It's kind of their journey of their relationship and trying to get clean together. And man, I was teasing Sellers the other day, and I think I said to him, you know, if I fired you tomorrow and I needed a new co-host, you know who I would call? And he's like, who? And I'm like, Tyson Hanig. Because that dude is hilarious. Funny cat.
That's why we're still married.
All right. Well, now that we kind of got this thing rocking and rolling, everybody's nerves are settled in, right? Episode 112 is brought to us by High Desert Counseling. High Desert Counseling is a progressive substance abuse treatment facility with a practical approach. They offer day treatment, morning and evening IOP, continuation of care, and Prime for Life programs. Check out their website at highdesert.help or call them at 435-673-2899. Their facilities are located in St. George and Cedar City, Utah. We appreciate them sponsoring this podcast. Episode 112 is also brought to us by Rise Up Supplements. Rise Up Supplements is a nootropic supplement line aimed at optimizing brain function and supporting mental health. They have two powerful nootropic blends. Mindful Mood helps decrease anxiety and enhance mood, while Mind Shift helps increase focus and optimize brain function. Place your order at riseupsups.com. That's RISEUPS.com. At checkout, punch in podcast 20 to save yourself 20% off your entire purchase. Appreciate them sponsoring this podcast too. All right, well, let's get into it. So, Meet the Staff series, episode number 1. You guys are trailblazers. We've never done this before. So, Crystal, maybe let's start off with you as the co-host. Like, you know, I went over the tagline of the sponsorship mention, but what comes to you the most when I say, like, what's different about High Desert Counseling?
I think the one thing that really sticks out to me is what Mike named the pretzel effect, where we work really closely with other places in the community. We do a pretty good job at getting our clients connected with resources and other providers in the community. When I was going to school, one of the things that really stuck with me was that my job as a therapist is to get my clients to a place where they no longer need me. And we know that community support and connection is super important with people in recovery. And so we tried to add a pretty healthy component that would fit that need.
I love that, right? The pretzel effect.
Yes.
So it's funny that I kind of have a little story around this. I don't think people completely understand what happens at like a treatment center facility, right?
Right.
So High Desert Counseling's outpatient. Anyways, let me get into the story. So I went to the dentist. If I have like a lisp, it's because I got aligners going on. I get my teeth fixed. You know what I mean? I'm like trying to take care of myself in recovery these days. So I show up to like dental appointments, you know?
Right.
It's like a thing apparently. And the lady that was working on my teeth said, like, she asks the typical get to know you, fill in the awkward moments questions like, where do you work? Tell me about your work. And so of course everybody knows somebody who's struggled with addiction. And she's like, oh, I had a cousin's aunt's dog's uncle's friend. Right. And I'm like, oh, sweet. And she's like, I always wondered what they do at like a program like yours. And she said, obviously there's like therapy that's involved. And I said, yeah, of course. And she's like, but what else? And I'm like, oh man,
Everything.
there's a ton of stuff, right? Like that's just a tiny little piece that we do. So Vanisa, I wanted you to come on here for the first part because I truly believe what makes High Desert Counseling an exceptional place and what a lot of people don't know about substance abuse treatment facilities is the case management piece, that peer support piece. So maybe fill in our listener, Miss Dental Hygienist, who has no idea what goes on except for the therapy portion. Like, just what's a day in your job look like?
Oh man, I get to do all the cool stuff. I get to just share my experience, strength, and hope with them. help by relating with them. And I mean, even the simple stuff like jobs, like filling out an application or making like an online Indeed resume. I've offered to do that before. Helping with filling out paperwork, helping them get connected in the community. A lot of people struggle when they get, I know I did for sure when I first got into recovery with wanting to go to meetings, or I just felt really different. And I know that it's our disease that does that to us. And so I can relate with them being like, oh, I've been through that as well, and help connect them with people I know will take them in and help them in whatever, if they want to do the fellowship, one of them in a AA or addict to athlete, or if they're more interested in USARA, I can set them up with people like that, just so they can start building like some outside support outside of just group, people they can keep talking with after treatment ends. Beautifully said.
And that's really kind of when I always said the whole what we do at High Desert Counseling, I really believe in is that piece, getting them connected to agencies outside of us so they can have long-term success.
Right.
What a lot of people I think forget is when you're very early in recovery, we're talking 30 days or less. Crystal, you're a therapist, right? CMHC, LCSW?
LCSW.
Okay, thank you. Yes. We have a strong credentialed person next to me here to support, we forget that like their frontal cortex isn't working, and so like oftentimes family members, friends, they all want the best for that individual. And they're like, get out, find a job, find some independent housing, make it to your appointments. There's a thing called having car insurance and a valid driver's license, right? Like everyday stuff that most people are probably listening to this and going, well, obviously they know that. Knowing that and having the cognitive ability to do those minute tasks is sometimes two separate things, right?
Absolutely.
So that basic piece of just helping them, like, let's fill out an application. Let's update your resume, right? It's a big piece. Okay.
It can also be super overwhelming. I mean, imagine for a second that everything that you have in your life is gone. Like no birth certificate, no social security card, no driver's license, no insurance, no primary care physician, like everything. And trying to start with nothing can be super overwhelming. And you may know all the things that you need to do, just like what you said, but figuring out what steps to take. And some of that stuff is like really complicated. I mean, it seems very basic, but you get online to get your driver's license and you need like your birth certificate and you need your social security card. And then you go to get your birth certificate and you find out you need your mom's, uncle's, brother's, like whole life to get that stuff. Or you need a parent to go in and get it for you because you don't have ID. Like it's a bunch of catch-22s, and having somebody who has walked through that before be able to, take their hand and walk with them while they do it is super helpful. It's the support, and that piece is invaluable. And I have to say that I think often case managers are underappreciated. I know for me that I could not do my job without them. The support that they give the clients and me, the therapists that work there it's amazing. And oftentimes the clients, I mean, I'm in recovery myself. Our case managers are also in recovery. I just broke yours. There you go. Hi.
Okay.
But my position, it's still sometimes intimidating for them. And with the case managers also being in recovery, oftentimes they're more comfortable opening up and spending time with them. And so it's an invaluable piece of our program.
I'm glad you brought that up, Crystal, because one thing that I completely realized in this moment that I've forgotten to do is let Vanisa kind of share a little bit about herself and her story so people can kind of relate. And we broke your anonymity. Sorry about that.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about you?
Okay. Well, I grew up here in St. George. I grew up in a family where everyone partied. Like I had pretty young parents, and it was really normal for people to get drunk on the daily basis. So I grew up knowing that as my normal. It wasn't too long after I started drinking that I picked up heavier drugs, and eventually started doing basically anything that would be put in front of me. And I struggled really hard with wanting to feel just safe somewhere, and I just really couldn't. And so I was just trying to be anything to anybody at any time. So I was a chameleon all the time. I would switch from one drug to another drug because I'd burn all these people, and then I'd be with another group of people and just going in a circle. I went from St. George to Cedar City to Vegas to Salt Lake, and just, burning bridges. Ended up homeless, and then ended up back in Cedar City, and started getting in trouble with the law pretty bad. And I racked up like 4 felony charges. And I was 21 years old, and I was told that I had the option to either go into drug court or I could go to prison. And so I didn't believe them, and I denied drug court. And they were really going to send me to prison. And so I begged to talk to the head of AP&P in Iron County and asked him what I could do if drug court was still on the table. And I got to go to drug court. I got to go to the Horizon House, and I had been to treatment quite a few times before. So I just felt like I already knew everything when I got to the Horizon House, and I just didn't really feel like they were going to be able to teach me anything. And I got lucky and got Crystal as a therapist. So I learned a thing or two. And I got out of the Horizon House and still didn't really know if I wanted to be clean. I just knew I didn't want to go to prison. And I got pregnant. It was a surprise pregnancy. And I felt really unprepared to have a baby. Like, I didn't know anything about being a mom. I knew how to party, and I knew how to protect myself, and that's about all I really knew. And I felt really inadequate, but I knew that I was in a good position. I was in drug court. I had a good therapist. I had an amazing tracker who loved me and put up with a bunch of my bull crap, like a lot more than he probably should have, and he made me see my worth. And so I went through with the pregnancy. I did what I could in drug court, but I really didn't build that outside support other than my group. I was very comfortable with Crystal, very comfortable with my tracker. I had a sponsor, but I wasn't going to work the steps. I didn't think that applied to me. I didn't need to do anything other than jump through the hoops. And when drug court ended, I relapsed that day after almost 18 months of clean time. And it was during COVID, and there wasn't a lot of meetings going on, and I was still a new mom. I think my daughter was like 9 months old when I relapsed. And it was really scary. I didn't really know what to do. I mean, I knew what to do because I'd been in recovery before. I'd had some clean time. I'd been shown what to do, but I just didn't really know if I had the courage to do it, especially with there not being a whole lot of in-person meetings. And I just really got kind of scared about reaching out, thinking that people weren't going to accept me again. And after a few months of just horror, it was just horror. Like I got really bad really quick. I was suicidal. I didn't want to be alive anymore. I kept looking at my daughter thinking, like, why did I do this? I was clean when I had you. Why did I do this again? Now I can't get back out. And I had that pain that I had never felt before. And it was the pain of being an addict and a parent, and my parents stepped in and was like, you don't deserve your daughter, we're going to keep her. And I wish I could say that was the reason why I decided to get clean. But it took a couple more weeks. And I got invited to go on like a suicide walk with somebody. And I was like, I don't even know. I like woke up that day and for some reason hadn't used, you know, and I it's not odd, it's God, you know? And, I had a friend invite me to go on this walk, and I showed up there. I went and picked my daughter up from my mom's house because I didn't want them to know I hadn't had her with me that day. And I'm walking with them, and my sponsor's there, you know? And I was like waiting for them to ask me like where I'd been and what's been going on. I was like trying to come up with all these answers in my head of like what to tell them, you know? And nobody asked me anything. They just walked with me and acted like I'd never left before. And at the end of the walk, I remember thinking like, man, these people love me. Like people love me. And I turned to my sponsor and I said, I need you to come to my house with me. And she came with me, didn't ask any questions. We got there and I had her remove all the paraphernalia out of my house. I had a box of wine still in the fridge, had her get rid of that as well. And I just said, I need you to take this. And I need you to never tell me what you did with it. I just need it to be gone. I don't have the strength or the courage to flush it. I can't watch you take it out. Like, I just need it to be gone, you know? And she left and she called me and she said, you really want to do this? And I said, yeah. And she said, what are you willing to do? And I just said, whatever you tell me. And I think I started working my steps the next day because I didn't do that before. And I just haven't stopped. That's like, I got involved with the recovery community that was up in Cedar. I was still living in Cedar at that time. And I had to move back down here and had a little scare about joining the recovery community down here because it was so tight-knit and so much different than what I experienced in Cedar, or at least that's what it felt like.
That's what your disease told you?
That's what my disease told me. And so I think I was down here for almost a year before I went to a meeting. I stayed doing my step work, which is the only reason why I stayed clean. And then I also had another baby. So, but yeah, I came down here and got to be a part of the recovery community down here. And it was a game changer for me. Like I love being in recovery. I can't imagine being a part of any other kind of community. Like this is the best kind of community to be a part of, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty rad. We have a pretty cool community down here.
Yeah.
Almost like second family, right? Like
absolutely.
Oftentimes I always refer to like I have my biological family and then I have like my recovery family. Yeah. So you shared that you were lucky to get Crystal. Is that how you felt in that moment? Because
So
I know my girl Crystal next to me, right? And she will tell you herself that she gets often like you're very intimidating. You're very like direct and very when you get to know her, she is a big softie like most of us, probably like myself. Yeah. But she does a good job of keeping that
A secret?
yes, a secret. How did you feel about it at the time?
Oh man. So when I first got into the Horizon House, she was the only therapist working there at the time at the women's house that was also an addict. So when I felt really lucky in that moment, because I was like, I had a hard time. I always wanted to be different. So I didn't feel like they understood me at all. Like I was really defiant and I was just going to fight anybody. And so I was willing to work with Crystal, you know, and she was great. I was a more difficult client. I had a hard time. Kind of just doing what I was supposed to do. I wanted to fight everything. If I was like, okay, I can stay clean. That's not a problem. But do I really have to have a curfew? You know, do I really have to go to 2 meetings a week? Like, do I have to process everything? You know? And so there was just some things that I really wanted to fight on, and Crystal never let me. And yeah, there was a time where I was like, man, this sucks, you know? But I really appreciate it. And that's the kind of person that I need, someone that's not going to put up with me, you know, have those boundaries up, because if you let me walk all over you, I'm going to.
We call it resistant compliant.
Resistant compliant.
I call it
It's my
adult
favorite.
oppositional defiance because supposedly I learned that oppositional defiance disorder is not in adults.
It's
but
not.
it is in adults.
But we have it.
Yes.
Mine
but it's a
definitely
thing.
carried over into adulthood.
Yes. It's my favorite.
So Crystal, let's get kind of your side of that. You used to work for Southwest.
I did. I worked for Southwest Behavioral Health Center. I worked at the Horizon House up in Cedar for about 7.5 years. I started as a tech. That's what most people call him.
Yeah.
And I went through grad school while I was working there and graduated and got my license and worked as a therapist there as well. The first little while, I think it was like the first 3 years that I worked there, 3.5 years, I was at the women's house only. And then once I started in grad school and started to work as a therapist, they moved me over to the men's house. Vanisa was the last female that I had that I worked with. And for me, it's really hard to put words on it, to have somebody that I worked with in that capacity that now works with me at the treatment center that I work at. It's amazing. It's super cool. I watched her progress from afar after we parted ways. I would see her in the recovery community. That's what I mean from afar. We weren't like, besties and going to lunch, because you can't do that. But I just watched her in recovery, and what I saw was incredible. And that's why I do the job that I do. Everybody knows when you work in treatment, there's lots of heartache, because lots of us die. That's a cold, hard fact. And it's heartbreaking.
And it can be emotionally draining.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
some of the stuff is heavy. The piece that she
hard to
shared
hear.
about being one of the only clinicians, therapists, whatever, that was in recovery, do you get that a lot? Do you find that people are more comfortable working with you because you identify as a person in long-term recovery?
Absolutely. So the therapist that I worked with up at their Heisen house was amazing, and I learned so much from her. And she broke this down for me. She was not in recovery, and she would get that a lot. And she said, if I break my leg and I have to have surgery, does the surgeon have to have had a broken leg to put my leg back together?
Great point.
Yeah, and that hit me. I was like, no, they don't. And watching her work with the clients, she was amazing. That being said, I think I have a lot better rapport with the clients right off the bat because of that. She had to work harder to get it. And I believe you can understand addiction and you can absolutely help people that are addicts without being one, but you never know what it feels like if you're not one. And that empathy piece, I think for me, the wreckage of my past has become my greatest asset. And so that's really cool.
That is cool. That's very cool. And I think the reason why I asked that is, and when you're going to school, so I'm a substance abuse counselor, so I have a little bit of some of the education that you have, right? They teach you about self-disclosure. Like you shouldn't do the self-disclosure thing. It's a bad idea, yada, yada. What I've typically found is, number one, it's hard for me to ask a client to be authentic if I can't be authentic myself. And number two, there's something to be said about when somebody feels like you'll never understand them and you can literally look across from them and be like, I've been you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I can.
Different name, different skin, but story's the same. There is that natural connection. So it's kind of cool because I think some people, I've met people that are in recovery, that are clinicians, but they don't tell their clients that.
Right.
I myself have never really understood that.
I've always disclosed that. But also our community is pretty small. And if you're in recovery and in one of the fellowships in this community, everybody knows.
Yeah.
Most people already knew that I was in recovery and that I was an addict before I ever disclosed that. I also my supervisor that I worked for, her name was Leslie, and she was absolutely amazing. She told me at one time, she said about self-disclosure, because it's a little bit different when you work in substance abuse. She used to say substance abuse is a whole different animal from anything else. And it is. She gave me some great advice. She said, don't ever disclose anything that you haven't fully worked through. And that was really cool, really good advice. I don't have a problem disclosing that.
I love that. And I'm sure there's a valid point to that, right? You need to do the work around the stuff that you need to work on before you open it up, especially in front of clients, right? Right.
And disclosure is one thing you have to be careful not to make it about you. And we all know how much us addicts like to talk about ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good point. Well, I think mission accomplished so far. We have 25 more minutes of this in part 2. However, we've gotten to know you both a little bit more, gotten to know your education and background and working in the field, Crystal, and gotten to know you, Vanisa, and kind of your story of recovery. We're going to get back to that in the second part of this thing. So stick with us. Episode 112, Getting to Know the Staff series is underway. We'll be back after this little 30-second sponsorship mention.
You are listening to We Do Recover with Jared Miller and co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. We'll be right back after this short break with more of We Do Recover with Jared Miller. Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the Hilton Garden Inn.
High Desert Counseling is an adult outpatient substance abuse treatment facility. We offer multiple services including day treatment, morning and evening intensive outpatient services, continuing care, and Prime for Life. What makes us different is our emphasis on gathering all of the information before enrollment. We do this by offering a thorough evaluation by a credentialed professional. Once we have committed to you and you have committed to us, don't worry, insurance will not dictate your treatment. Lastly, the pretzel effect. We are a brief intervention where we connect our clients to community, mental health, and medical professionals to help maintain recovery for life after treatment. At High Desert Counseling, we strive to be the bridge from active addiction to recovery, community, and connection.
We welcome you back to We Do Recover with Jared Miller, co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. And now with part 2 of our podcast, Jared Miller and Dr. Terry Sellers.
Yeah, now say it now. Say it now.
All right, welcome back to episode 112. I tried throwing Crystal right underneath the bus with like 10 seconds before we were back on here. So, all right.
Well, it came on, and then just the deer in the headlights. It was just like,
I didn't know I was supposed to talk. I was waiting for the light that said now.
Yes. That's what makes this thing beautiful. Is it's organic, right?
let's try to get ready. 3, 2, 1.
We're back.
All right, she nailed it.
Bravo.
Something about Hilton Garden Inn, right?
Yes.
It's always sunny at the Hilton Garden Inn.
Boom! She made it.
All right, I
It
like
is
that.
always sunny and bright. Episode 112 is brought to us by the Hilton Garden Inn,
Where it's always sunny and bright.
where it's always sunny and bright. If you or a loved one are traveling through southern Utah, give them a Google search. Just go to Google and type in Hilton Garden Inn in St. George, Utah. Yes, it's always clean. They have amazing amenities. We appreciate their sponsorship. Okay, so the goal of this Get to Know the Staff series was to get to know you both a little bit more. I feel like we've done some of that. What I also failed to, man, I'm all over the place today, right? So let me settle in here. Typically, we start off with like new and good, a message of gratitude. What has recovery brought in you so far that you're grateful for in life today? It's mostly for me because by nature, I'm like a glass half empty kind of guy. So it forces my brain to like find some positive stuff going on, right? So new and goods. Vanisa, we're going to start off with you.
Okay.
What is new and good in your life today?
So much. Oh man. Okay. So within the last year, I got married to someone else who's also in recovery. We have 4 kids. So he had 2 before, I had 1, and then we had a baby and then got married. So I have like a whole family. And
You got like half of a baseball team.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, you're on your way. You
I have a
could-
minivan.
You could fill the whole infield right now.
I could. Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's really cool.
So Jesse Tranny,
Yeah. Yep.
Trainee.
Yes.
I say his name wrong. He corrected me the last time he was on here. We did an episode with him and a couple other people about like a community recovery thing where we cleaned up the backyard for.
For one of the Unity houses.
Yes,
Okay, I
for
remember.
one of the Unity houses. He was on here. Go back and check out that episode. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but Jesse's a good dude. He's also the guy that whenever I have like yard, lawn, anything landscaping, he owns his own business, right?
Right.
Trainee Landscaping. Give him a little plug, little shout out. He does a fantastic job. He's worked on my sprinklers several times. Just a solid dude. So congratulations on getting married. What else?
Thank you. And so I started working at High Desert, which is really awesome. It's like seriously my dream job. I've as soon as High Desert opened up and I saw that Crystal was working there and I had enough clean time, I was like, man, I want to be a case manager there so bad. I was working at another treatment center and as a psych tech, but I really wanted to do case management. I love working in residential treatment and being there, but I really wanted to do the life stuff, like teach life skills, because that's what I can offer. I've gone through that hard part of having nothing and having to build up, and I wanted to be able to help people do that. So I reached out to Mike and asked him if they had another case manager position open, if he would, if he'd be interested in talking with me. And I think they ended up reaching out to me, not even knowing that I messaged Mike, and it was perfect. I couldn't go back to work full time. They needed a part-time case manager, and it was like it was meant to be. And I felt like that ever since. And so my life has just been really good. I get to do the mom thing all day long, and then I get to go to work at night and do what I love doing, working with people in recovery with some awesome coworkers. So my life is really good today.
That is a beautiful new and good. I love that. So we've worked together running some night IOP stuff, right? And I always find it very valuable that you care a lot about the clients, right? That you're always coming in, you share your experience with them, you pull them aside, and if they need a little redirection or help on assignments, take the time to do that type of stuff. So yeah, it's been good working with you.
Yeah, I love working there, and the assignment stuff is my favorite because I've done all the assignments that they do besides some of the more personal ones, but I've done all the assignments, and so I know how to do them. And so it's really nice if they have trouble that I can walk them through it. And I even have my assignments still from treatment that I can show them now.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I found them the other day and I was so excited because I wrote a bunch of them.
That's cool. That's way cool. We're going to jump back into something that you mentioned about the residential piece. But before that, Crystal, what's
Yes.
new and good in your life?
Oh my gosh. My life is really amazing today. I will go with the top two that stick out. So I recently...
Despite Tyson?
Yeah.
Or I mean, because of Tyson? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
my
he's a
brain
big part of
again
it.
messed up
I know.
today.
He makes things super cool. So the top two, I recently got to go to Belize and go scuba diving. And I got to pet a shark. And that's been on my bucket list like forever.
What type
And
of shark
I'm gonna,
are we talking
my
about
eyes are
here?
going to leak because I can't even contain like how excited I was. It was just a nurse shark. They're like
Okay.
babies. They're
All
like
right.
puppies. There were some, what are they? The black tip reef sharks. There were actually a bunch of them. It was a little intimidating, but I almost got in trouble because I didn't want to come back up. Apparently I was down too far for too long, and that can be really bad, or I don't know,
Oxygen
something like that.
deprivation, something like
Yeah.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
you
And
just
I-
lose brain cells or something. It's not big.
Yeah, and and they assigned us. We were supposed to use the buddy system, and Tyson was my buddy. And we got up afterwards, and he was like, "Did you forget about the buddy system?" And I was like, "Well, no, I was just the leader," because I was literally off in my own world. I just want to live down there, and I've always wanted to touch a shark. I don't know why I find them fascinating. I'm kind of obsessed with them. Tyson bought me one of those sharks that you can follow with the bracelets.
Oh, wow.
For my birthday, and there's an app, and his name is Thor, and I check on him all the time and see where he's at.
Like a real shark.
Yeah, they tag him for research purposes, but then they sell the app, and they give you a shark, and it comes with a little bracelet, but it's an app on your phone. And I have a shark. I just about said shork because when I get excited, I make up new words.
So I gotta tell this little story. When you said you got to pet a shark, it immediately brought me back to a day I was doom scrolling on social media, and I saw a reel of a guy, and he's like with his little one, and the little one's in front of him, and he's like reaching over the boat, and he's like touching the sharks, right? And a shark comes up and grabs his pinky. I'm not making this up. Twists 3 times, and his pinky was gone. And then it's just squirting blood everywhere.
Gross.
So I had that run through my mind. I'm like, Crystal, you're pretty brave. That's why I asked, what kind of shark?
Yeah.
Because these weren't small sharks. These were big boys.
Well, and at one point when we were down really deep and we looked up, you could see the shadow of the boat, and there was literally like 4 reef sharks circling the boat, just like I didn't know that they did that in real life, like circling the boat. That was a little bit intimidating, and I think the boat left and then came back. But I don't know, it was super amazing. And they feel leathery, like sandpapery
Really?
leather. Yeah. It was strange.
I would
but
expect for them to be like
soft, like a dolphin,
silk.
smooth.
I was thinking like a rubber glove for some reason.
Nope.
Like
They're
latex?
rough.
Weird.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I can't wait to go back down and see more bigger ones.
See, you're gonna end up with missing a pinky, Kristen. This is how it starts, right?
My husband's really worried about it.
The thing I love about your New and Good is I've heard you talk about this a little bit at work, and there's a recovery related story in there.
There is.
The Grateful Dead. You love the Grateful Dead. Tyson, I got her for you. Let's talk about what happened with the Grateful Dead concert.
So I don't really love the Grateful Dead. Everybody that knows me knows that.
He hates the Grateful Dead.
I do. However, my husband loves the Grateful Dead. And they were playing in, I can't even remember. Belize was the second part of the trip. I can't think of the name of the place right now. But
it's like on the beach, some tropical.
Cancun. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'll go. I'll go hang out on the beach. It was a 4-day show. But there's, one of the recovery tools that we teach called radical acceptance. And I did a really good job. I was dancing. I was out there. You would not have ever known that I did not like the Grateful Dead. I had a great time. It was like, do you remember that movie Cocoon?
Yes. Where the people go into the pool
old people,
and
they're all over like 80.
Yeah. Yes.
Anyway, one of the coolest parts for me is there's this group of people, and they're not anonymous, so I know I can say their name, and they're called the Wharf Rats. And they are in recovery. They had a place called Recovery Island that was in the middle of it was in front of the soundstage, but in the middle of
the crowd?
Yeah, which was literally on the beach. And if you were somebody who was in recovery and you were struggling for any reason, all you had to do was find the yellow balloons, and you could go hang out with a whole bunch of people that were in recovery.
So they had like balloons
in the
they
concert.
Were holding, or in the roped off section?
No, the balloons were, I don't know, because I didn't actually walk over there to that part.
Oh, okay.
But I could see the yellow balloon through the crowd. Wow. And so they were holding them somehow. The other cool part was that they had recovery meetings every morning on the beach at 10 o'clock in the morning. And we went to 2 of them, and they were a couple of the coolest meetings that I've been to. And so although I may not be a huge fan of the Grateful Dead, I definitely fell in love with the people that were there.
That's so cool.
And it was,
let me get
cool.
this straight here. I'm hearing something. So Grateful Dead concert.
Yuck.
Band,
but yes.
Band notorious for drug use.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you can go to the multi-day show and have recovery meetings before the show.
Yep.
And then find the yellow balloon at the show and hang out with other people who are in recovery at the show.
Yep. It's called
amongst other people who are probably not yet ready for recovery.
Yeah. It's called Recovery Island, and it was like it was actually up close. There's a whole section of people in recovery that was for other people in recovery in the middle of a Grateful Dead concert.
That is cool.
It was amazing.
That is cool.
Those are probably the only people that will remember the
concert.
4 days of the Grateful Dead concert.
I got a buddy who goes to Grateful Dead concerts all the time. So now I have to say, hey, have you seen the yellow balloon?
Yeah.
There you go.
Find out.
What are
There's
they called?
a video.
Wharf Rats?
Wharf Rats. WARF, like Wharf Rats. Yeah. And they were the most welcoming, friendly people that I've met in a really long time. And the music was actually okay. I think part of it's that I've just kind of been on that bandwagon my whole life, like anti, just because everybody else liked it, because I have to be different as well. But it was super cool. Winona Judd came out and did a duet with them.
Wow.
And that was like awesome. I had no idea she could sing blues like that. And then there was who's their new singer? Come on, John Mayer. John Mayer sang for him, and he's pretty hot, so that made it tolerable. It was cool.
Nice.
Yeah. No,
nice.
It was fun. I had a great time, and it was really cool for me. And this is something else that recovery has given me, for me to be able to go and do that with my husband for him, even though it's not something that I would have picked. That's been huge.
Yeah.
Caring about other people.
I have to jump in on this one. I heard a similar story years ago. This thing, going on a cruise. You guys, I'm going to this one here.
Yeah.
No,
I
okay.
do.
So, I'm familiar with going on a cruise.
Cruises are notorious for drinking and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
And then, anyway, so if you are, if you say to the bartender, you're friends of Bill W., then that's code to say, hey, I'm part of AA. Please don't serve me alcohol.
Yep.
And so they try to push the alcohol on everybody else until you say, hey, I'm friends with Bill W. And then
that's code.
That's code to be like, I'm a recovering alcoholic. Please just get me some Sprite and club water or whatever, and we'll call it good.
Without making a big deal about it.
Right.
Yep.
It's the equivalent of going to In-N-Out Burger and saying, I would like that animal style.
Yes.
Not quite.
You will not find it on the menu, but if you know, you know, right?
But it's nice to think that there's places, there's still enjoyment of life and activities for people in recovery, especially when some of those activities are so closely associated with addictive behavior.
Yeah, absolutely.
So interesting, like that goes right along with that. We also went on a cruise for Christmas, and I had never been on a cruise before. And we actually went to a meeting on the cruise ship. It was listed in the things of events, and it said Friends of Bill W. And so we actually attended a meeting on a freaking cruise ship, and that was pretty amazing. And I've heard that announced. You can also do that in airports, and I've actually heard that go over the intercom, where if you're struggling, you can page Friends of Bill W. and people in recovery will come.
That just goes to show you can in anywhere, right?
Anywhere
these days.
We're everywhere.
That's so cool. We've come such a long ways from the way it used to be. You know what I'm saying?
That's such a good thing to know. So now if I hear somebody paging Friends of Bill W., that's something that
means you need to go.
maybe I can step up and say, hey, I can be as a support there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Wait a minute. You've told me about your trip to Jamaica. I don't know about. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. So, on that note, right? It's probably good to acknowledge we're just joking on here. If you're a normie, if you can go to a Grateful Dead concert and have a few beers, good for you, right? Like we're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings.
No.
Or Jamaica and have a few beers, Sean. It's fine. People can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that rolls into my new and good, which I shared last week. So we have a couple recovery concerts going on. Maybe we can get the Wharf Rats to come to these recovery concerts.
That'd be rad.
So people will know about them. So on June 3rd, up in Ogden, the Ogden Amphitheater, the Talent in the Park, the SJS Scholarship Foundation, which is a nonprofit, helps individuals get into Valley Camp, is throwing a fundraiser where you can see like Joe Nestor play. You can see Kalichi's coming this year for like $20. You get in. There's a bunch of different bands. They have local people come. And last year it was cool. Like these little girls did this karate display thing, right? And they're out there breaking. I guess it was more than girls. It was girls and boys. They're out there breaking boards and fighting with swords and stuff. And I'm like, this is crazy, right? It's kind of fun. And then June 4th, down here in southern Utah, if you're coming down for the Aaron Navarro softball tournament, that Sunday on the 4th at the Cox Performing Arts Center, we're going to have Joe Nestor and Kalichi do a recovery concert. All the funds raised will go to the Sobriety Foundation, which helps people get into sober living houses. So we got some cool recovery concerts coming up.
Nice.
Yeah, that's my new and good as well. Sean Donovan, you got a new and good now that I've made you uncomfortable?
Everything I say now has like zero value because it's not even close to what anybody has said. I needed a bolt for my motorcycle and nobody had it in town, and I found it online and it cost like $4 a bolt, and I got it. There you go. That's my new and good.
Hey,
so now
good
my motorcycle's
job.
Almost ready to ride.
I love it.
That's it.
That's great.
No Grateful Dead concerts, no amazing stuff. Just an overpriced piece of metal that I had to buy from Florida because Ace Hardware didn't have it.
Nice. Fantastic. I didn't realize we've been doing this for a minute. We got 8 minutes left. We better reel it back in and talk about some. No, we talked about recovery stuff,
It was
right?
sharks. It was the sharks.
Absolutely. This has been good stuff. Okay, so you brought up, Vanisa, you brought up the residential, like you love the residential setting.
Yeah.
I personally believe that there are all the different levels of care. They all have value.
Right.
Some people need that higher level of care. Where this is a get to know the staff at High Desert Counseling, we don't offer that the residential portion of care. So one of the things, I guess, is you brought up the whole helping them get back into life.
Right.
Which is perfect because that's like part of your job description. Take them to Voc Rehab, take them to workforce services, help them get set up with an independent medical provider, help them with independent housing, right? All of those things. So have you been able to kind of find your niche with doing that stuff? And do you miss the residential day stuff?
So yes, I have. And I do miss residential a little bit. It's a lot. I mean, I'll just be honest, it's a lot. And
like what's a lot? The residential
the
portion?
residential portion, yeah. It's especially I went to an all women's residential treatment center last time, and I worked at co-ed one, and there's some different things I didn't realize were
a thing.
That are going on. And I just remember, like, even when I was in residential, just like being away from my family and only having what is going on right now to focus on, and like where my unmanageability kind of came out, was like, it was everywhere, and it was a lot. And I really appreciated the staff that I had that were there and willing to deal with it and deal with me, because that was a lot. And so that's why I wanted to work in residential. And I didn't have a whole lot of that, honestly, but there was still a lot of like people running and like, they get there and like, I care about those people, I care about people in recovery, and you build relationships with them, and then, they're in for 3 days and you're help talking them through, letting them know they can do it. And then the next day they're gone, and then, a week later they're dead. And like, that was really, really tough for me. I struggled a lot working in residential because of that. That's the main reason why I didn't want to anymore. And I wanted to kind of start going towards maybe more of a transitional setting, working as a case manager and being able to help them just go out and just get it,
Absolutely.
Residential treatment is necessary for a lot of people. And I like it. It was great. It worked for me. I could have never done IOP. I could have never. I was not the one,
Right.
I would have never showed up.
Catch me if you can.
Yeah, good luck.
Yep. Only getting clean behind a jail cell.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, I was one of those
I
people.
think we all three of us in here were that way at one point. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I love working in IOP because, they have the treatment, but they also are getting to do the other things, and like they don't have to just come right out of residential and just have everything thrown at them. Like the step down process is really important, I think, so that you can still have that support. Because like Crystal was saying, having your plate full like that and not knowing even the order to go in can be really discouraging sometimes.
Absolutely.
And having a group you go to 3 times a week where you can bring that up and talk about it, ask for feedback from your peers, and then, your case manager, and have them help you with that is invaluable.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think a lot of people, and again, I want this to be information, education, and getting to know you guys, right? People that don't understand the treatment world, they don't understand the recovery world, and Crystal helped me make sure I get all this right. When we talk about higher levels of care, typically the first stop is going to be detox.
Right.
The goal of detox, I'm going to be real dramatic, don't die, right?
Mm-hmm.
Medically get them off the drugs. The next stop is going to be residential, which is a 24-hour care facility that Vanisa just did a great job describing. They are very emotionally, what's the word?
Unstable,
Charged. Yes,
Yeah.
unstable.
dysregulated.
Perfect. Beautiful. The goal of that is physical stability, because they're still having pause, post-acute withdrawal symptoms,
Yep.
and mental stability. Help them figure out how to deal with all that dysregulation, right?
Yeah.
Then you step down to what's called day treatment, or PHP. The goal of PHP is additional mental stabilization, sometimes some physical, depending on how long they've been in residential for, and if they're still exhibiting post-acute withdrawal symptoms. Am I getting this right, Crystal?
Yeah. Great.
That's where high desert counseling comes in. That's our highest level of care, is that day treatment level. You're coming for 20 plus hours per week. It's a level of accountability, structure, you're getting UA'd every couple days, really providing that support. Then you have the IOP. I always say the goal of IOP for me is like, we teach you these coping skills, we get you physically stable, we get you mentally a little bit more stable. Show us you can apply them. Get a job, get independent housing, application too. Because like you shared, Vanisa, you can learn this stuff all day long. If you don't ever take it and apply it, it's worthless.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I think that, so then there's GOP. Would you add anything to those, Crystal?
I think you did a really good job. I mean, really.
I would say the goal of GOP is maintenance.
Yes, GOP is maintenance, and it's a place where it's our continuing care group, and or recovery maintenance, however you want to say it. And for me, that's my favorite group. I mean,
Why is that?
Because they're coming in, and like a lot of the fear is gone. They've gotten used to us. They've gotten used to their group members, and they're starting to put their lives back together. And they're actually starting to apply the skills and the tools. And so there's just a little bit more rawness and a little bit more real. And they come in and they're sharing about like the date that they went on that didn't work, or like their roommate that's using and they don't know what to do about it. They don't know if they need to ask the roommate to leave or if they need to move out. Like they're protecting their recovery the best they can at at that place. But that's the part, they're putting their lives back together and they're sharing about it. And so for me, it's that getting to watch them. And that's the part where I think they really start to flourish and grow. And you can see that they're actually in recovery. Mm-hmm. And that it just warms my heart. Like that is where the magic is for me. I like all the other levels of care. They're, day treatment's not my favorite, but we're messy. We're messy. I know
that was a lie.
That was a lie.
But
I like them all. I like IOP. And I think it's that way. Like the more independent that they get, the funner it is to work with them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it is. And it's not about them as people. It's just where they're at.
It's fun to tease the IOP and GOP level people. Mm-hmm. And you remember when you first started riding a bike as a kid and your parents took the training wheels off and you were cool as long as somebody was holding that seat and they were running behind you, like you were good. You could do it, right? And then all of a sudden, one day you look back and they're 20 yards behind you. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually doing this, right? Like that's what I think of at that level. And I always tease them and say, don't look down, but you're doing this thing, right? Like don't freak out. Mom and dad don't got their hand on the seat no more. You're rocking and rolling. So
first thing I thought of when you said that was like, nobody ever told me don't pull the front brake.
As you go up over the handlebars.
I figured that out. Yeah. But yeah.
Also, we've started an interim or a group to get people in it. A lot of people have been through residential. They've got the skills. They just have a hard time applying it. Mm-hmm. New to high desert counseling. What are we calling that, Crystal? You came up with it.
I don't know what the name is yet.
An interim group that you can come before you get into day treatment services to get you toward the point where you can UA clean and begin day treatment with us.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much. This has been fun. We'll see you next week for episode 113.
Thank you for joining us today on We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
Help us spread our message of hope. Like, comment, and share.
If you have any topics or ideas for future shows, please share that on our Facebook page.
That Facebook page is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. If you or a loved one needs help, please reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening.
Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of its sponsors. This has been a production from a podcast studio.